All right. Welcome back to another episode of DigiNomad, DNMs. Really excited today because we've got the wonderful Mercedes on with us. We met on Halloween, which was such a special night. It was really, really cool. So yeah, Mercedes, do you reckon you could tell us a little bit about yourself, first of all, and what you do?
So I am a sustainable food systems consultant. I do USAID projects in South America and Africa. So USAID is the U.S. agency for international development. So I do a lot of the projects in country when I'm working directly with people, but everything else can be done remotely. But I also run a small media company where I focus on food and culture. And of course, that is always done remotely, unless I'm attending an event that I'm covering.
That sounds like a really, really awesome area to be in. You know, you're working for an American company and you're also doing your own thing on the side. Could you tell me a little bit more about what this position has allowed you to do, or maybe on your journey the last couple of years?
Definitely. Well, I've actually always worked internationally, but because I had a child at home, I couldn't really just, throw caution to the wind and say I'm going to be full-time abroad, traveling wherever the wind takes me. But now I am an empty nester, so I can do that. So it's been really good. This has been the first year that I've been able to just travel nonstop and be fully remote. So it's wonderful. My work does allow me to see many remote places that people typically would never go. I work in extremely rural villages in countries that are still developing, so it can be rough. You have to have a thick skin, but it allows me to have a real bird's eye view into food and culture. From the media angle, it also allows me to really have, I think, a nuanced perspective in how food and culture are represented in media and pop culture, and just how our relationship with food is constantly evolving day by day. I really enjoy that.
So what would your advice be to someone who maybe hasn't, maybe they haven't traveled so much, they're looking to do a bit more, maybe they're a little bit nervous about trying new foods and new things or new cultures?
I think, the number one thing is definitely to keep an open mind and to be willing to accept that things are not going to be always as you want them to be. You're going to be out of your comfort zone a lot. And it's much easier if you go without expectations and wanting things to be like you're used to. Things are different.
Yeah, I love that word, different. Like, things aren't strange, they're not weird, they're just different. It'd be great to dive into a little more about where have you been since you've started traveling, and where's your favorite locations for nomading? Where would they be?
So far, Portugal has my heart. I thought I was only going to be there a week, and I spent 3 weeks. 2 of those weeks I spent in Porto, which is a little town that I do think I may make my home base coming after the holidays, because I just really love it there. It's so beautiful, it's peaceful, but yet there's a lot to see and do.
Definitely. Perhaps we go right back to the start about how you started working at the company you're at, because we've probably got a lot of people watching that are interested in getting into remote work and are just really wanting to know how to get started or how to position themselves in the best way, join a remote friendly company. Can you tell us a little about that?
Well, not really a company that I'm working for. So USAID is a government agency, U.S. Agency for International Development, and I don't work for them directly. So I work through their subcontractors, and it is independent. So they will issue a contract, subcontractor will pick up that contract, and then they will put out a call for consultants. Depending on, the scope of work, I will say, okay, this is like something that's a great fit for me, and then I will apply. And if I am chosen, then I go and I complete the assignment. But it is still very much independent. It's not like having an employer. You're only committed for the period of the contract that you signed for.
Is it important to have a full-time and then a side gig?
I don't have anything that's full-time. Neither of those things require full-time. I do think that it is important to have multiple streams of income. For example, during the pandemic, I could not do any international development work because the U.S. wasn't sending any consultants abroad for 2.5 years. So all the contracts that I did have were immediately canceled. There was no way to really know when contracts would pick up again. So, the pandemic definitely put a nail in a lot of things, and I had to pivot to focus more on the media aspects of my company. And if I did not have that company, I really don't know what I would have done. It would have been extremely hard to stay afloat. So I think, when you're working for yourself, you don't have, the same types of insurances, at least not in the US. You don't have the same safety guards when you work for yourself that you do when you work as a full-time employee for a business. So you definitely need to have multiple streams of income.
Could you touch on some of the things maybe people have or have not considered before diving into being a remote contractor?
Well, one, you need to know that you have marketable skills that will allow you to be able to afford to live the lifestyle you want, because you do have to pay for a lot of things out of pocket, and you need to make sure you can bring in enough money to cover those things. For example, our health insurance is usually tied to an employer. So if you are self-employed, that means you have to get your own health insurance, which can be very expensive. Depending on what state you're in, it could be hundreds of dollars per month. And you have to factor that into the money that you bring in, because you don't want to get caught with no insurance. You definitely don't want to be overseas with no insurance. So I think you have to have like a wide net, when you're thinking about types of things that you have to consider. Things like disability insurance is also something that typically comes with employment. What if you get hurt and you can't work and you're depending on being able to do work that you have to do physically? Sometimes people that go abroad, they teach. That's something you have to physically do. They may be going abroad to do photography, something again that you have to physically do. You need to consider, what if you have an accident and you can't physically do this work? You're in another country. Where is the money going to come from to support your lifestyle? So just making sure you have all those bases covered, I think, is very important.
Totally. And you covered some really good tips there. We've mentioned multiple streams of income, having your business, having different contracts that you can accept, not all your eggs in one basket, and also
definitely
learning what your marketable skills are. What's that value that you're bringing to the market to be able to support yourself? Because travel, it can be a little cheaper in developing countries, but still you're paying for a lot of things. Would you ever go back to being full-time employed, even if it was for a remote company?
I don't know.
Or
I don't know. I have actually thought about that. It's actually kind of hard for me to envision working for someone else full time. I haven't worked for someone full time since 2016, and it just is I don't know. I don't like having that type of time constraint. I like being able to say, okay, I'm going to take this month and just go wherever I want to go. I don't want to have to be glued to my computer from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock when I could be hanging out for 8 hours and then decide to work 4 hours because I feel like it, whenever I feel like it. I like that freedom and flexibility. I prefer to have opportunities where I have deliverables. I know, okay, I need to have A, B, C, D done by this time. And how I get that done is completely up to me. I do understand that there are rewards that come with having, a regular job that is remote, because you do have a lot more security there, but you also give up a lot of freedom as well. So I don't know. I've actually asked myself that question many times. I think it would have to be a really good offer. There'd have to be a lot of money on the table for me to give up my freedom.
That's awesome. I mean, freedom, autonomy is like two of the massive things that come with
everything.
Running your own business and doing your own contracts, right? So
yes.
That's awesome. I feel like once you get used to that, it's hard to go back to.
It's hard. It's
one of the terms I use is designing your own life, right? You've got a lot more agency over your life to design it how you want now. And for me, freedom is everything. I spent a lot of years trying to climb the ladder in DC, working on Capitol Hill and working, on policy and then in nonprofit management. And, the higher and higher I got, the more and more constrained my lifestyle was. And for me, it's just not the type of lifestyle that I wanted anymore. I think, when people think about being a digital nomad, they do tend to think of, millennials and young people, out, catching the waves and then getting on their computer whenever they want to. But I think also for older people, it is a way of life that they should consider, because even when you are, not young, you still have life to live.
You still, it ain't over till it's over, and there's no reason to give up 40 hours of your precious time to do jobs that oftentimes you can do in like 10.
It's so true. Like, I think you can travel at any age, right? Why isn't digital nomad thrown into the mix there as well? I did just want to touch on, I think that's such awesome advice you gave, and a lot of people would think that digital nomading is for perhaps a younger crowd that are a bit more maybe tech savvy. What would your advice be to anyone watching? Maybe they're in the similar boat. Their kids have flown the nest and they're in that stage of life where they've got some more free time. What would your advice be to someone looking to travel and work in that scenario?
My advice is just get up and go. I do think that for, sometimes older people, they get fixated on, I need a big house, I need a big car, I need all these things. You need some investments, you need some money in the bank, but you don't need these things that are going to tie you to, place. Freedom is, something that we can all learn and grow from. And no matter how old you are, I think it's an extremely rewarding experience to travel and get to know about different people and different cultures. For me, it's definitely something that I plan to do until I physically can't anymore. And if you have someone that, you can travel with, that's even better. Get a partner who has the same, views on life and go together.
That's it. Two's company.
Yes, it is. Definitely.
What advice would you have to someone who doesn't know how to find what the market wants?
Find someone who does and ask for help.
Yeah.
Because you have to. You have to know how to market yourself. I mean, for me, social media is everything. LinkedIn in particular, when it comes to professional contracts, I think is extremely useful. So having a well-built out LinkedIn page that completely shows, the full scale of what your capacities are, get recommendations from people you've worked with, put photos on it, allow it to tell the story, I think is important. But, if you can't do it yourself, get someone to help you. There's a lot of other freelancers out there that you can hire that will be more than willing to help you, tell your story. But I think it's absolutely vital because, it's competitive, especially now after the pandemic. No one wants to be trapped in an office. Everyone is looking for remote work. So you have to be able to sell yourself.
That's it. I think you touched on LinkedIn there. Is that your primary kind of source for finding clients?
Yes, it is. LinkedIn is definitely primary for finding contract work. I mean, you can do so much around networking because you can be a LinkedIn creator where you can write blog posts, you can do video posts, which will allow you to show, your expertise in an area. You can connect with people who are leaders in organizations in a way that you can't on any other platform. I think that it's extremely beneficial when you're talking about finding remote opportunities or any kind of contract business opportunities. LinkedIn is the place to be.
It's so interesting, to see, LinkedIn such a big area for finding clients and that professional consultation space as well. On the LinkedIn side of things, would you have any advice for someone looking to get into the consultation space using LinkedIn?
Well, the number one thing is that LinkedIn should be interesting. It's not a resume. A lot of people put their work experience on LinkedIn in bullet points as if they're writing a resume. It's not a resume. It is a digital story of your professional life. So when you were at ABCD, what made you stand out? What did you accomplish? Why were you drawn to this particular line of work? Be creative, show your personality, because you have to stand out from everyone else.
I think, it's an awesome place to really test whether what you are selling, as in like the service you're offering to provide, is something that people want.
If you're not showing up in any searches, no one's looking at your page, then okay, I need to do something differently here because I'm not marketing myself very well.
I love this kind of LinkedIn topics. I think it's going to be super useful for anyone in that wanting to get into that consultation space. Any final tips for someone exploring that field and working with clients online?
Just to not be afraid of technology. Technology is empowering. Technology levels the playing field. People really need to understand technology. If they don't understand technology, they need to take time to learn because it's not going anywhere and you're only limiting yourself by not embracing it.
Wow. And so true. So true. Just don't be afraid to, dive in and learn something new. Technology is going to be the vehicle, especially if you're a nomad, that's going to help create that sustainable financially free lifestyle?
You can have any kind of life you want to have. It doesn't matter if you're single. It doesn't matter if you're married. It doesn't matter if you have kids. You can have whatever you want. It's all about you making the time to invest in figuring out how to do it. And I feel like, that's definitely a story that I want to get out there. I want people to know that you don't have to follow the formula if you're not happy.
Oh, I love that so much. I feel like there's an entire YouTube channel you could make just on that topic alone. It's so good to like get a different perspective on that as well, and really encouraging, because a lot of people watching this would just be getting started on their travel journeys and going like, okay, cool. This can be a lifelong thing if I want it to be.
Yes, indeed.
Any final thoughts or words of wisdom before we wrap up?
The number one thing is be open-minded. Don't be afraid to go someplace new, to do something different, to try new food. Because I think that, you never know. You never know what opportunities might come your way. And you learn and you grow so much when you just allow yourself to be open.
So good. And any final plans for New Year's or coming into the new year you could share with us?
Yes, well, I'm actually going home for the holidays, and then I'm going to go pick up my kid. So we'll be spending the holidays together, and we're traveling for a big tech event that I'm covering in January, and then I'll be going to Zimbabwe.
You're literally the world's coolest mom, I've got to say.
Thank you.
Oh, well, thanks so much for sharing with us today, Mercedes.
It was fun. I really appreciate you reaching out to me and considering me, including me in this project. I think it's very important. I'm honored.
All right, thanks and take care.
All right, you too. Take care. Bye-bye.